So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Last show. It's our MasterClass show for 2023. The last show, as I've mentioned a few times now. For those of you that don't know my name, it's Paul Jantz, and we're here thanks to Hall Chadwick's Professional Partners Education and our amazing sponsors that again have been with us now the second year in a row. Profit Master, Global Outsourcing, iKeep, and Lloyd's Auctions. So again, a massive shout out to all those companies, Profit Master, Hall Chadwick, iKeep, and Lloyd's Auctions for being with us and again supporting us in the way that they have. Now, I know a lot of you are here with team members as well. I know you're joined by yourselves, but you also join with team members. So if you're here for the first time, let me just quickly share why Professional Partners Educational PPE was created. And it was to provide an educational platform for you guys being our accounting community. We've been doing that the last couple of years, but more importantly, if you've missed anything. So I think I get emails after every show. I probably get 30, 40, 50 emails saying, PJ, is there a recording? And yes, there is. So our whole masterclass series, plus call it our technical, practical lunch and learn workshop series is all on our YouTube page. So if you get to YouTube, type in Professional Partners Education and that will pop PPE TV Plus, and you will see all of the episodes, all the podcasts, our Empire Masterclass on the various topics we've got, whether it be marketing or whether it be sales techniques or business processing or cyber, whatever it may be, it's all on our YouTube page. Now, as I've still got you, which is probably the most important thing, let me introduce you to our panel today. As I brought in some of the big guns, probably the cyber and tech experts from the best around the country. I've got James Hay, I've got Mark Howarth, and I've got Jamie Beresford. Gentlemen, welcome. How are we?
Very well.
Thanks, Paul.
G'day, Paul. James, Mark, how you going?
Yeah, well.
Good. James, mate, thank you for joining us. I know you've probably taken yourself off the sick bed, so mate, thanks for being here. Hopefully you get through the next hour and we are all good. So let's cover a few of the problems, or let's call it the challenges, because we've got a fair bit to get through in the next 57 minutes. We know some of the problems at hand. We know our industry, call it the accounting financial services industry, is just under constant attack. We know our people are under constant attack as well, whether it be through emails, whether it be through text messages. I think I get one a day, to be honest with you, and you get tempted to have a look at it, and then your brain goes, no, don't click on that link. And we know changes are coming as well with theirs, and James is going to speak about some of the changes in particular to the Essential 8 framework that we all need to know about coming in next July. So we're going to work through some of the things we're doing well, some of the things that we need to be aware of, and there's no doubt, let's call it some of the cyber criminals now are probably getting smarter and smarter. So we've just got to try and stay one step ahead. And what I'm going to encourage all you guys that if you are online listening to this as well, I'm going to throw a poll up there very soon. I'm going to ask you about whether you have a strategy plan for tech and cyber. So if you have a strategy plan for tech or cyber. So let me just quickly go to my poll, and it's just a simple, I'm going to launch that right now, and you guys can tell me whether you have or whether you don't. And whether you have or whether you don't, this is about either, number one, improving it. Okay, so you can, if you've got one, fantastic. It's about how you can improve this. It's like everything. You've got a business plan. We want you to make sure you're updating your business plan, financial plan, all these sorts of things. And same with a tech and cyber plan. Okay, so funnily enough, the numbers are pretty even here. 54% say yes and 46% say no. Okay, so if you don't, they're not bad stats, but if you don't, this is a way to obviously create one, and we're going to take you through a number of key things that you can start looking at to make sure they can form a part of your plan. And that's about these sorts of things, I suppose, and that's probably where I've got the pleasure of bringing you these three amazing guests. We're going to talk to you about all things cyber and all things tech as well, so you can look to see how that can integrate, and becoming aware of what to do and how to stay one step ahead, I think, is probably the most important thing that all of you guys online will get. So let's start putting some plans into 2024. Jamie Beresford, I'm going to start with you, mate. I know that you joined our show early this year as well, and you spoke about cyber, which I think was a very popular episode back then as well. Might have been February, March. But given your background and given the importance of protecting data, I know you guys work with more than 2,000 accounting firms using your Practice Protect software. Let's start with what's changed in cybercrime targeting the accounting industry in 2023.
Good question. So, put simply, I think that the attacks have changed from the spray and pray mass mailer type click here to win your prize and various changes to a much more targeted and sinister way of leveraging AI. So, for example, when there's an entry point through a mailbox in the old days, basically they just blast an email to all of your contacts and try and infect them as well. Nowadays, what we're seeing is a whole lot of research, both automated and by humans. So to understand who you are and leverage or exploit any what we call payment partners. So any payment workflows that you're involved in, or any trust that they can find. So, for example, if you have, sometimes it's family members, much more specific targeted approach to the way they are individually targeting people.
Okay, so you mentioned AI before, and I think it's a funny thing. Artificial intelligence is coming more and more into our world. How do you work through what is good and what is bad?
Well, it's just evolving so rapidly. I think the first thing is just not to get too worried about it, because you can only go as fast as it's evolving, and just go. And everyone's in the same boat. So if that's a broader AI related question, from our perspective, it's keeping us on our toes. And traditionally, we've taken our product provides a security layer over an accounting firm's tech stack. With these changes that are happening, we're now having to integrate more deeply inside the tech and play a broader sort of IT role in a small accounting firm's business, rather than just, a software and compliance over the top of it.
Interesting. So where are we going wrong? Where do you think we're going wrong when it comes to understanding the cyber risks that are out there?
Two things. First of all, hackers don't hack, they trick. People are, hackers aren't sitting there trying to hack into firewalls at an SMB level. They're trying to trick people. So it's a matter of not being tricked and not allowing your team members to be tricked. And inadvertently, if someone does get tricked, because you can never be 100% bulletproof all the time, having the right compliance layers in place to mitigate that risk and limit your liability in case that happens. Because ultimately it's inevitable, and you can see it with the insurers are hiking their premiums and limiting their coverage and really scrambling, because it's a difficult issue to take responsibility for. The second thing is it's all about access, not storage. And when we talk to people about cybersecurity, the first thing they think of is where's the data located? What about my data store? Where's my files? They're leveraging, and it kind of goes back to that hackers don't hack, they trick. They're impersonating legitimate access to your stuff. And it's about managing and controlling access to your storage that is going to reduce your risk, rather than focusing on the storage itself.
Interesting. And look, it's such an interesting point that you make, where they don't hack, they trick, because you're right. They make you think a second time, because it happens to me all the time, and I go, no. Where is that coming from? Does it look legitimate? The worst part is when you do get legitimate stuff, you now start questioning that as well.
Yeah. Have to pick up the phone or send them a message.
That's exactly right. And look, Mark, James, if you guys got any comments as well, you want to add to any of this, please jump in at any stage as well. I've got no problems with that. Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah. Let's go.
So I've heard you talk about, Jamie, again, I've heard you talk about the devil is in the detail, or the devil is in the email sometimes when it comes to securing an accounting firm. Are you okay to explain a little bit, or expand on that a little bit more in some detail for us?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it's number 3. I think when we talk to specifically accounting firms who are so conscious of their client privacy, ultimately, our relationships is really the true value of all of us in business, and the mind goes towards the client's financial data, which is typically held in financial packages, Xero, QuickBooks, etc., and their file storage in documentation. But email is the number one platform that gets breached. It's all about email. And the reason for that is because once you get into someone's mailbox, you can impersonate them, as I sort of touched on earlier, but also you can go through all, we can reset passwords to other applications, and you have a tremendous amount of knowledge around that person in order to exploit other areas of their lives or their social or commercial networks. And, you know, cybersecurity is sometimes a bit like a car accident, right? Once the car accident happens, the first question people want to ask is, what was the damage? You know, how many people were hurt, etc. You don't learn anything from that. You learn from what the driver was doing to get distracted to cause the accident. And we always like to make that distinction between the entry method and the payload, because, you know, there's no such thing as a ransomware attack. Ransomware is a payload that a criminal chooses to deploy once they have access to your systems. And that's a really interesting one, to fundamentally think about cybersecurity, focus on how they got in. And the number one way they get in is through email. And there's several different reasons that email is such a popular target.
Interesting. And I'm sure all of us have experienced it, certainly over the last couple of years, where you're right, whether it's a text or an email, it's definitely cleverer and cleverer. So it's an important point to make sure that you're chatting to everyone. If it's, again, a part of your strategy plan, making sure how you're going to cover that, and probably from a people point of view. And it's probably a nice little segue to call on Mark Howarth from Fishnet. Mark, let's talk about the human element side. And I've heard you talk about as well from a human element and cybersecurity strategy map. So human element, the cybersecurity strategy map. Let's talk about that a little bit more. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, for sure, Paul. So look, the human element, that's the role that we play in our organisation's cybersecurity defence. And, you know, Jamie made some great points around mail, and email is kind of the number one targeted vector. But we are working with our systems, technology every day in our business interactions. And sometimes our cyber behaviour lets us down. We just might click too quickly on that email, as we've talked about. And cyber criminals are aware of it. And that's why I've got that number behind me there, that 74% of incidences actually occur through human error. So critically important that people are aware of the risks, and that they're obviously being trained in those risks as well. But apart from phishing, and we mentioned smishing, which are those text messages with that little link, and at this time of year it's particularly popular, isn't it? Click here to see how your parcel's tracking. And we've all got that Christmas pressure there. So there are two things. The other two things that I would mention is password management. So want to make sure that you've got great password behavior, so you're not reusing a password, you don't have simple passwords, and you're not writing your passwords down. So putting your passwords into an Excel spreadsheet and storing them on a file share somewhere, that'd be a real no-no. So passwords are one. And then I think just the other one is in our workplace today, we're all working remotely. We've got a hybrid workplace since COVID-19. Trying not to mix and match personal computing on your work device, I think, is another important area, and somewhere where we can just practice some good behaviour.
So do you want to just expand on that a little bit more? What did you mention there in terms of don't mix your personal and your business? Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, that's what I am suggesting. So, you might, so you've got the one device.
Yeah.
Well, you're out browsing the internet, you might download something's got some malware in it, and suddenly you've got a cyber incident that's broader than just your personal device.
Interesting. So you're suggesting people have two devices?
I'm suggesting they have two devices, and obviously having secure access into your network from that device using something like Practice Protect is obviously really important as well.
Yeah. Jamie, you got anything to
Yeah, that blending.
That one?
Blending is what we call it, and Mark's touched on there, is a huge one, especially since COVID, where everyone took their computers home and all of a sudden, or they used a personal computer and everybody's work started blending into their personal lives more. And, sometimes it's a family computer or something that you got other family members using, or people are entitled in the personal environment, people will inadvertently use the computer for personal endeavors, whatever they may or may not be. And that all increases your risk of cyber. And when you've got client data or commercial data on that machine, it increases the risk significantly. And the problem you have, if you're using a personal device, have team members, oh, I'm happy to use my computer. That's great, because I don't have to go out and shell $1,500 out on a new laptop for you. You then, as a firm owner, you then have no real right to control or track that machine or implement controls. That team member's up to their own devices, pardon the pun, yes. To manage their own device. So absolutely what Mark said is the number one for remote work and home computing, even offshore aspects. Always, you got to own the machine so you can control it and secure it.
Okay, really important. And I think, again, this is probably where we can, in this hour, we're going to touch on a number of things, but I suppose to all of you guys online, just if you're taking this, or again, this will go into post-production and it'll be online. So if you want to rewatch this, make sure you're taking notes and then going back to your certain providers and making sure all of this is covered, I think is going to be really important in terms of your strategy plan moving forward.
Just want to hear my pun again.
Exactly right. So, Mark, let's talk trends. Let's talk trends that poses threats to the landscape. You okay to go through those?
Yeah, sounds good. So Jamie touched on phishing emails. So there's really three trends that I'm just going to touch on. So firstly, in terms of phishing, the State of the Fish 2023 report suggests 94% of Australian businesses are going to receive phishing attacks. So for everyone out there, if you think, oh, it's not going to happen to us, or just maybe, and we take the analogy of the car accident, right? I'm driving the car. Well, guess what? These phishing attacks, you're likely to get targeted and you'll be a recipient. So they're not going away anytime soon. The other thing is we touched on AI. Sydney Morning Herald ran an article the other week on Worm GPT. So that's a AI platform that's specifically built for phishing emails. So when we looked at phishing emails, generally in the past, you'll see bad grammar, some spelling mistakes, things like that. Going to start to see phishing emails that actually have great grammar, no spelling mistakes, and are very persuasive, right? Because cyber criminals, they know that that's the number one vector by which they're going to access your business. So really need to be across phishing and AI phishing as a trend. And then the next area is ransomware. So talked about that as a payload. That's the key. That is increasing. The Conversation, an electronic online magazine, they're suggesting that since COVID-19, ransomware attacks have grown by 500%. So a little bit back to that phishing email number. If you don't think you're going to get targeted, think again.
Well said. Well said. So Jamie's mentioned it, and Mark, you mentioned it as well. And so it's coming back to people. It's coming back to us to making sure we're conscious about maybe what we're receiving and how we're probably going to be tricked in this world. So, Mark, from your point of view, how do we create a security conscious culture? We talk about a culture in a business, and there's obviously good culture and bad culture, but now we're talking about a security conscious culture. Are you okay to take us through what that could potentially look like?
Yeah, for sure, Paul. So there's a few things in culture. So I'm going to start top down. So what I want to see is I want to see partners, I want to see executive managers, I want to see them talking about cybersecurity. I want to see them talking about how they're addressing it. When doing that with your teams and actually bringing that to life, maybe not every day, but certainly every week, bi-weekly, make it part of your actual conversation. And that's partner through to graduate, through to your offshore teams. make sure everyone knows that your cybersecurity active in your behavior.
Mm.
The next thing is reporting something, right? If you're getting phishing emails or you're getting those smishing messages, or you're just seeing some poor behavior that is, you think, a risk to your business, encourage people to report it and make it an open, clear forum, no blame, no responsibility. Those things have really got to be reported for someone to do something about it, particularly in terms of IT. The other area I think that's really important is policies and procedures. And again, Jamie touched on that. Don't let your cyber policies and procedures sit in your desk drawer and gather dust, right? Bring them out and make sure everyone knows what to do if you have an incident.
Mm.
Don't keep people in the dark. Don't treat them as mushrooms.
It's a good point, Mark. And, when firms are using the FishNet platform to educate their team members, a lot of them don't take that next step and actually get your team to execute an IT and internet usage policy. And what that does is really sort of puts the cherry on the cake to go, yes, I've watched the FishNet content and I've gotten a great score from that. I understand all of that. I understand what the do's and don'ts in my firm are. And apart from sort of, driving a little bit of accountability within your organization for your client's security, it's going to significantly limit your exposure in the event that something happens, to demonstrate that prior due diligence to what you've done. And that's a lot of firms miss that one. We talk about compliance, but you've got to bring it down a level and, what is compliance and what does that actually mean? And, most of this conversation and what cybersecurity is about is the human aspect of cybersecurity, educating team members with a platform like FishNet, and making sure that they are willing to commit to understanding what they've learned in that training and be responsible for the usage of their company and client platforms.
Okay, I like it.
And just picking up on that. So the last thing I was going to mention is knowledge is power, isn't it, right? So if you can't recognize a cyber threat, how are you going to avoid a cyber threat? So knowledge is power. People need training. Everyone needs training. And just quietly, can I mention, in terms of all the people that we have in our customer base that don't do the training, tends to be at the executive level, right? Because they're going, no, it's not me. I don't need it. Everyone else needs it. Well, you know what? This Christmas, I'm going to recommend that everyone does some training and just stay cyber safe.
Okay. So I suppose, Mark, on that, if I go back to that first point that you mentioned and getting that conscious security culture, is there a way, would you suggest that we start just talking about it, and certainly partners of firms, managers of firms, just start as a part of their conversation? So we can, just to give someone a little bit of how to do it. So the guys that are online, how would they start doing that?
Yes, I think they're going to start doing it through a conversation. Obviously, they're going to look at what material is out there to educate me. How can I educate my team? And they're going to ask the question of their team: do you know what a phishing email looks like? What would you do if you get a phishing email? And that's all going to feed into those things that Jamie talked about in terms of my compliance, my policies, my procedures. And if I go back to your poll, Paul, you asked the question about strategy. So these are some of the strategy things that everyone out there needs to be thinking about. So what is my compliance policy? What are my cyber policies and procedures? Have I done an incident test? How do we respond? How do we document it? Who's the go-to person in the organization if something happens?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they can start that conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, this is again another nice little segue. Not that we planned it like this, but a nice little segue as we bring in James Hay from CT Group. James, obviously switching gears a little bit into, let's say, the tech environment, and we've been just talking about, as you've been listening to nice and quietly while I'm being unwell, but still just getting into this environment with the team members, and we're talking about policies and procedures and all these key areas that I think people have got. To be fair, I think when I was running my business, you'd have everyone sign your policies and your IT frameworks and so on. with their employment agreement, and it tends to go in the drawer and gets forgotten about, doesn't it? So
That's
now
right.
we're saying, let's bring that out and let's talk about it. Fair to say?
Yeah, yes, indeed it is. And I think listening to Jamie and Mark, it sort of leads into, I guess, where we're heading from a government's perspective, but also the tool sets that we need. I guess, as Jamie said, the more sinister side of the cyber incidents now, we're seeing a lot of social engineering sort of happening from our part, where as simple things like if you haven't got your DNS or your email address locked down, we're having people, pretend to be managing directors, contacting staff, getting them to buy Apple vouchers and things like that. So there's a very it's come a long way, I guess, in a very short time. Where as Mark also mentioned, I think that the emails are going to have better grammar. So even listening to both Jamie and Mark around this, from what we see in terms of a support perspective, but also what we need to deploy to all of our clients, it's imperative that the tool sets that Jamie provide, the trainings that Mark's provides are huge importance. And then third to that is the documentation piece. And not just from any compliance part, but from a cyber insurance perspective as well, where monthly we would be filling out God knows how many multiple insurance forms for our clients to say that these levels have been met. And it's everything from a business continuity planning is in place. You've got your incident response plans, you've got security planning, and that then leads to what the Australian Securities Directorate and the ACSC has put in a framework around. And again, the tool sets need to sort of be deployed, the training needs to be in place, but then to sort of reach new maturity levels, that comes down to the documentation.
Yep.
Similar to, align with ISO compliance, it's all documentation that people need in place in their business. But
so let's delve a little bit deeper into that. So let's go into, let's say as an example, let's say your IT tech environment. And from an IT environment and a client requirement, I think that's the great thing here for all the firms that are on board, not just to look at their own business, but then also start chatting to their clients about this. Not that they need to be expert subject matters like you guys are, but the awareness of it. And if they're doing it in their own business, well, then they can talk to their clients about this. So are you okay to explain a little bit about the IT environment and then the client requirements?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to note that if you do or are using an IT provider, to make sure that there's always an open and transparent communication around wants and needs, but also requirements from a business perspective. We do a lot of work with obviously the legal firms, but also accounting firms, and some of the firms that are going for either government tenders or insurance tenders, it could be finance tenders, have a different requirement to your local firm. And that requirement's just based around what level or maturity levels the firms want. Well, the tender they're going for are going to need to see in that tender documentation. I think from the IT landscape or environment, it's always important to understand your security posture, where you currently are, but also what's on the horizon. If you're not having a chat about the next 6 to 12 months and longer, obviously, if you start talking 24 months, that'll change every 6 months at the rate that we're moving. But I think having that open communication and understanding roadmaps, doesn't need to be a monthly conversation, but you need to have a provider that's able to tell you what's in market, being able to recommend products like Practice Protect for security measures, being able to talk you through what that training looks like from Mark's perspective, but also then help you through how to get there, because it might not be something you deploy all in 4 weeks. It's a huge change management to start putting in certain, changes the larger the firm is. But it's important road mapping that in over a period of time and understanding that you're hitting those milestones as you're, completing those roadmaps.
Now, you mentioned security posture, which personally I haven't heard before. So are you okay to just expand a little bit on that and talk about how it could affect the business that people are online with right now?
Yeah, look, your security posture is what you've got deployed. It's the level of security. If you think about hacking, and I had this explained to me because I'm definitely not the smartest one in my firm. So the way it was explained to me is hacking is, if you think about, you've got a door and someone's trying to get in, they're trying to break it down. You add a lock, you start adding additional layers to it. You're essentially trying to remain in the leading edge and not the bleeding edge. So you're constantly trying to reinforce that door so that as long as they don't kick hard enough and find a crack, they're not going to find a way in. So in terms of the security posture, it's constantly having those conversations as to, okay, have we deployed the right say endpoint detect and response, which is a tool that's able to deploy antivirus to any machine logging into an environment? Have we got the right antivirus in there, or the right solutions? So understanding that from a security posture perspective, but also making sure that things like what Mark's training will do is it'll tell you which staff aren't actually completing it. So you're able to find from that perspective, where do we need to focus on? And is it the senior management team that aren't completing these little know-hows on how to avoid a phishing or what to look out for? So I think from an overall security posture, your IT partner and the partner vendors that you work with should be able to really tell you what needs to be focused on. I'm sure Jamie's got tools that will tell you who's either not logging in certain ways or they're using things in a certain way. So there's information overload, but there's also, if you've partnered with the right people, a way to, I guess, mitigate that and understand your security levels and where you need to be.
No, that's a good point. And I suppose you just mentioned it just then, and I'm sure every business will have an IT provider. How important is it to engage with your IT provider as a partner and maybe asking better questions? Is that fair? Because I suppose I'm taking a lot on board today, just thinking, right, there's a lot of things that I probably need to ask as well. So is that a good starting point to maybe asking some better questions of your provider?
I think if you have a provider, of course, as I think Jamie said before, we work through relationships. We're no different to any other firm. I've got 55 staff behind me who know a lot more about the IT landscape and will provide the right information to our clients. I think it's always important to engage who you spend your money with, and make sure that relationship's clear and transparent. You're both working towards the same goals.
Yeah, good point.
I'll just pick up on that because James used the word maturity. So this is a journey, right? So, and you asked me the question, how do we start to build that culture? And the Essential 8's a great place to start because it does provide that roadmap of what your journey could look like. So when we think about maturity, we're starting off young, aren't we? And we're going to grow into sensible adults with some wisdom, I hope.
Yeah, good point. So let's talk about that, James. So I know when was it? September, earlier this year, you spoke at the Profit Master Global Conference in Manila. Actually, Practice Protect was there as well. You did talk about the Essential 8 framework, and we've gone into a little bit about this, but there's a fair bit of detail in this. Are you okay to go through this? And I know the timeline from memory was 1 July next year. So you're okay to go through that for us?
Yeah, look, there's a timeline of 1 July where the government wants to be able to essentially audit customers audit any business to make sure that their data security or their I guess the responsibility of data controls are in place. And it is a maturity level where you've got sort of 3 levels that are going to take a long time to sort of mature, but they're going to be constantly changing. The reason for it is to provide a framework on where your business sits. So each business has almost a trackable framework of actually reaching and achieving certain levels. It's something that we've been seeing in market for a long time already. Insurance, financial, banking, government, anything related to those industries have already been essentially forcing their clients or their vendors to reach these levels if they want to engage in business with them. And we've helped on quite a few tenders recently to ensure that the clients put their best foot forward. There are things that we'll uncover during that process that also need to, maybe they've missed out on. There's a bit of documentation. They haven't got their disaster recovery planning that's been communicated. They've got it sitting there in SharePoint, but hasn't gone out to staff. So what it's doing is really putting down a firm framework that allows a business to sort of mark themselves about how well they're securing their sensitive data. And I think it's going to become more important as you see these, how I guess vocal and how the media sort of drives these hacking events or these cyber attacks. It's important to keep yourself secured and stay out of the news, I guess.
So it'll be a framework that every business will need to have in place, is it?
To a certain maturity level. It's not a framework you have to have, but it's a framework that will probably change the way that you work with most of your clients. So as an example, maturity level 1, you're deploying things like what Jamie's tool sets are, but then you're adding a few extra sort of little points there. So maturity level 2, there's a lot more documentation that comes in play. And maturity level 3 is, I think there's 97 of the government departments, like the Department of Defense, ATO, people like that, that are there. I think there's only 25% of them that have actually reached maturity level 3. But again, this is why it's a roadmapped journey, and it's it's something that could take quite a while to get up to that point. But it's all about locking down different points of communication and access within your business. I think majority of businesses should be looking at that maturity level 1 as a starting point over the coming 12 months. And then looking at really a 2-year roadmap into that second maturity level. Unless you're working with insurance companies and you are government going for these tenders, I think that maturity level 1 with a roadmap into maturity level 2 is where majority should be sitting by probably June 30. And that should definitely be a conversation you're having with all your vendors, but also especially your IT. Get your IT company to have that conversation for you.
And who determines when you talk about a maturity level, what if I'm playing totally like I know nothing what you're talking about here, which people could be online exactly the same.
So the maturity levels, when you look through the framework, there's certain levels that you sort of hit as you're going down. It's almost like a checkbox to get there, but I think it hasn't been totally clear on who would sign off on that. For our clients, we'll sign a letter stating that we have deployed everything and done the documentation of what our clients require on our letterhead and sign off on that from a director group. As I said, it's a constantly sort of shifting market or goalpost. I think by the time we hit June 30, we'll probably have a better idea and see if there is a certification or I guess any sort of certificate that you can achieve by having those signed off. But it might be that it comes down to a third party's independent assessment of your IT, your security posture and your IT environment.
Okay. Interesting. So it's all relative to nearly every business to make sure, one, that I suppose this is where the mix comes into it, and hence why I've requested all you guys to come on board and talk about the IT tech side, the training side, and the software side, because everything we do nowadays involves all three of those, doesn't it, at the end of the day? I want to shift gears for a second, and I want to talk about, I think one of you guys raised it before, and it was insurance. So cyber insurance. I'll quickly do a quick poll, first of all, and then let's talk about that. So let's see. I want to end that one. We ended up there, which is good. How do I go back? Jeez, it's exactly what I shouldn't be doing. I want to launch this one. So again, a fairly simple one to everybody. How many of you guys have cyber insurance? I know I need to check it. So it'd be interesting to see. So here we go. It's a 50-50 split so far. So it's okay, it's swaying. So we're getting up to 60-40, 53, back to 50-50. So 50% of you guys don't have cyber insurance. Let's talk about that, guys. Who'd like to kick that off?
I'm happy to. Hugely important if you don't have it to definitely look into it. Cyber insurance, as I sort of said before, as we're seeing more of these cyber events, cyber insurance is that safety net that you might have from a forensic analysis, and I think Mark touched on it before, from the looking at where we're currently at and looking at what the mechanism was that got us to that event, but then also how do we get there? So I think from a cyber perspective and from our business's point, as I mentioned, we're sort of filling out these for clients on a weekly basis these days, just to help provide the detail of their security posture. And what that does, and effectively for the client, is that it could help bring down their premium depending on how much of their security or how tight their security is. So I think hugely important, especially any scaling business. The larger you grow, the more at risk you become, the more human element you're going to have in that potential risk. So I think if you don't have it, it's definitely worth investigating.
Yep. Is it fair to assume, sorry guys, and Mark and Jamie, please jump in there. Is it fair to assume that if you have a software like Practice Protect and you put the training in place that Mark offers, that insurance could come down?
Yeah, you've limited. So you typically complete a form or a mini audit sort of thing when you go for the insurance, and it allows you to tick those boxes that you are doing cybersecurity training with team members. You do have a system to manage access to sensitive data. Whole lot of questions around how you're managing devices, how you're managing your email. You can tick yes to all of those things. your premium's going to be, well, you know, you're going to be insurable for a start, and your premium's going to be considered. A lot of changes in this space at the moment. And, you know, I can only speak for the accounting industry, insurers, and just the exclusions that they are putting in place now. So, or, you know, there's a type of attack called a type of entry method called business email compromise. And that's rapidly, you know, that's seriously when I sort of talked about this moving from a spray and pray to this targeted approach. That's just what it's done is changed it from a ransomware type attack where, yeah, it's no good, everyone goes down for a few days, and provided you've got backups, it's embarrassing and it's interruptive. When you've got people transferring funds to the wrong bank account to the tune of, you know, $50,000, $100,000, there's some serious damages involved straight off the bat, and it significantly increases the impact of a breach. And when an insurer's got to foot the bill for all of that, not just the fee that will the transfer, but the argument that comes out of it and the forensic checking that needs to take place, is hugely expensive. And that's just pushed, you know, it's hammered a ton of insurers out there in the last year or so, and they're really sort of responding with more exclusions, higher premiums, higher excess in specific areas, and just so you really got to watch. The devil's in the detail on your premiums and on your policies. You got to make sure you are covered for that. They're referring to it as fraud. They're trying to go, well, we're covered for cybersecurity, but that's fraud and it's separate, and you're not covered for that. So if you want to include fraud, your premium is going to triple, and there's a huge excess on that. So really watch your policies. They're changing quickly.
Yeah, I would probably just add to that also, you know, as a company director, business owner, you need to read the fine print really carefully. However, given how much is invested in IT and the data that you hold and the position that you have with your clients, for mine, it just makes good sense. If you're going to have building insurance, why wouldn't you have cybersecurity insurance as well? But Jamie's absolutely right. Really got to read that fine print and make sure that it's working for you.
That's probably where whether it's a provider like CT Group that you mentioned you've been doing that for clients. Is that pretty well what you've been doing, James?
Yeah. Oh, look, all our clients, when their cybersecurity insurance comes up for renewal, they'll send us through the application that they're reapplying for, and we'll fill it out for them from a technical perspective and from what we deploy and what we manage. Yeah. Obviously, the clients will fill out some further detail, but yeah, the detail is definitely in there.
So coming back to what Mark just mentioned in terms of the partners, the directors, they've got full responsibility. It's their company. Do they push that responsibility down onto you, James, or is that still at the end of the day, the buck stops with them to make sure that they are properly covered and they're giving the correct information?
Absolutely. Look, we have our own cybersecurity and we have our own public liability and everything else. But look, as company directors, you need to be covered. If there is a hacking event, obviously, we look at what we've deployed for the client. We pass recommendations to them. We actually have an opt-out with our clients where if they don't take our recommendation, we get it in writing that they have refused to, based on the risk that we can see against their company, to sort of limit liability against us, but also to reinforce how important securing themselves is and how much of a target they could be. So I think from a company director perspective, just like my responsibility is to my staff and to keeping the business running, they've got the same responsibility, and cyber insurance will, if there is a hacking event, it just mitigates a lot of that responsibility that you have.
Yeah. So there you go, guys. To you guys, put this on your, again, there was 50% that didn't have insurance. Anyone recommend anyone that you're aware of that insures, or is that something that you would go to like your PI provider or broker?
Accountancy insurance, if you're an accountant.
Okay. So accountancy insurance offer it. Great.
Insurance.
Sorry, Jamie, what was that, man?
Accountancy insurance.
Yep, we got that one. Anyone else?
I don't have anyone for you, Paul.
Yeah. Okay, so accountancy insurance have obviously been around for a number of years, and they're pretty big, providing that insurance in case clients, obviously, there's a bit of tax fraud there or something there, and they've got to go through, and the firm needs to provide obviously all the different details and information. So I suppose the best thing is to go to your current provider and ask them if they do cover cyber insurance and how you can get a quote for that, and then tick all the different boxes along the way, which is, again, a great way to start. Because I suppose the different layers of, call it your checklist, is going to then provide you with what you may need to do next. And that can then form as a part of your strategy plan to make sure you are doing those next. And whether that's talking to your provider or talking to your software provider or talking to Mark about training to make sure there's that education piece around for your people, it all falls in line to make sure that you're ticking all of those boxes along the way. So, gentlemen, very, very good. Thank you. To all you guys that are listening, if you've got questions, throw them into the chat bar, please, because we will go to questions very soon. We've got about 10 minutes before we got to wrap up. But, you know, it's an interesting topic. It's a topic that I don't know a lot of. I'm learning from these guys, from these experts. And I know, being involved with a number of businesses myself, it's not something that I've probably chosen to be a part of, but I need to now get that knowledge and get that, tick those boxes, and making sure, like you guys that are online as well, making sure that your people are aware of what's going on, the constant training that needs to be in place with the software as well, because we've all got so many different software providers now, don't we? And that's the next, you know, you mentioned a tech stack, Jamie. There's so many of them there that we need to make sure that we're covering off. Guys, if I go to you guys for final words before we look at any questions, James, I'll kick off with you. Any final words, mate, that you'd like to share?
Oh, look, I think we've all sort of covered off nicely. I think just look, open communication with your vendors is always a big thing. You know, relationships and understanding where you want to be. I've always found that talking about where you have been hasn't really helped the long-term conversation. So sort of covering off that and where you currently are, and then long-term where you want to be, I think is always an important starting point to get you where you need to go, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So similar to, no different to your business plan. Where do you want to go and where do you want to be and how are you going to get there is again, falls into that strategy plan. So, Mark, any final words, mate?
Yeah, Paul, I'm going to talk about one more trend, which I think happens to all of us, which is the Christmas rush. So as we rush into Christmas, my call out there for everyone is slow down a little and triple check that email, triple check that SMS message. Don't become a cyber incident at Christmas.
Good point. Very, very good point. Jamie, any final words, mate? You're on mute, mate.
Sorry, mate. Look, I think we covered it off in a sort of fairly balanced way. I guess the main point, that human issue, not a tech issue. Devil's in the email, and it's about access, not storage. Hackers don't hack, they trick. They exploit legitimate access that employees use to access systems. They hijack them. I talked a little bit about that IT and internet usage policy document, Paul, and I'll be happy to share that with your audience. I can send you a link to that document where everybody can download and see a template of what one of those agreements looks like, because ultimately that's what's going to limit your liability and allow a firm to demonstrate due diligence in the event that something happens.
Brilliant. And I think, again, the more that we could give out, call it a Christmas gift from Practice Protect. So again, mate, absolutely. If you can send me that link, I will definitely email it out to everybody that's registered and been on today. Now we've got a question, Craig Bullock. How are you, mate? Hope you're well. Can you speak of the two-factor authentication? I'm assuming that's 2FA and password managers. Who would like to talk about that?
Me. So multi-factor. Look, password management predominantly started as a convenience tool. It's fantastic because it does centralize the storage of your passwords, but it's not a multi-level access control tool. Okay. Yes, spoiler alert, Practice Protect has a password management feature, but ultimately that makes things very convenient and gives you a good feeling of centralization of your passwords, but ultimately it isn't a permissions-based system and it is not going to protect you in the event of a breach. So if you're an accounting firm, I strongly recommend Practice Protect, but outside of that, yeah, not sure.
Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I would ask, how many passwords do we all have? I think passwords are an absolute nightmare. So 2FA, passwordless system access. I think 2FA is critical.
Yeah, well said. And look, I shake my head every time a question like, how many passwords do we have? And people say, don't use the same password. Guilty, but you got to, and then where do you store them? So you definitely don't want to store them in your notes or wherever it may be where people can get access to it. Yeah. So it's always an interesting one. And then of course, training, even nowadays with kids getting older and, they're on everything. So, again, there's a level there of even just education at the home. You guys spoke about it before in terms of home devices, work devices. It's the same thing, isn't it? There's just a level of constant education.
Yeah, it is. And if you're sharing passwords and logging your kids into some game, and you're doing that on a work device, however, it's your password, there's a real issue there if you're reusing passwords.
Yep. It's a very, very good point. Any other questions coming through? Doesn't look like it. If you've got anything, got about 30 seconds before we look to wrap up. Look, to all of you guys that have joined us again and supported us throughout the whole of 2023 and 2022. Thank you very much. It's been amazing just to be a part of this and continue to share, because more importantly, while I'm here hosting, I'm still learning. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is making sure I learn something every day. And there's a lot to take away from this particular session. So please make sure I will email you guys the link that Jamie just spoke about. Plus, I will make sure that you are aware of the copy that comes up so you can look at this, sit down and put together or update your strategy plan or create a strategy plan for your tech and your cyber. Let me just quickly check. No other questions. I think that was the previous one from there, from Craig. Beautiful. To you three gentlemen, thank you. Jamie, James, Mark. Again, I don't think we can get enough of this. We spoke about the importance of education, and whether it's our people or whether it's just us, there's always new things coming up, and we just need to continually be aware of them. So I certainly thank all of you guys for being a part of this. And Mark, I know you're new to the PPE team, but I know Jamie and James have been great supporters of what we've been doing and what we can do to help you guys out there as well. So just wanted to say a massive thank you to all you three guys that have joined us as our expert panelists today. We haven't done a lot of panels as such, so it's been great to get more than one voice on here to talk about this particular topic, which has been great.
Thanks, Paul. And just quickly, I'm also going to send you a link for everyone. It will take you through to a short online training session on phishing emails and how to recognize one.
Beautiful, beautiful. So send them through. I'll send it through to everybody in one email, which is probably the most important and most efficient. And of course, I'm sure from a IT provider point of view, talk to your provider. Obviously, if you're looking for a new provider and you want some more advice, talk to the guys at CT Group and contact James. So what's the best way to contact you guys if people online want to get a hold of you? LinkedIn? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn for me.
Yep.
Beautiful. So hit them up. Their names are at the bottom of the screen there, peeps. So if you want to take a screenshot and make sure you've got their names, if you haven't, or if you've got questions, or you just want to certainly toss a few things around, but LinkedIn's probably the best way to get a hold of these guys. It's been an amazing little journey for us for 2023. Look, to all of you guys that have joined, just a fantastic little thank you again. We will be back in 2024, bigger and better than ever. We've already been mapping out our content for the first quarter of 2024, but to all you guys, please have a safe and wonderful Christmas. It's hard to believe we're saying that with less than 2 weeks. Big fella's coming down the chimney, so the kids are excited.
Wonderful Christmas. Could I just say, thanks, Paul. I've been watching these all year, and there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing for these and facilitating. We all get to sit here and answer questions, but Paul's the one that has to sort of guide the conversation. There's a lot more effort required in facilitating than being on a panel. So you do a great job, Paul. So thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity to jump on here.
Thanks, mate.
I'll just echo that too, Jamie. That's been really good, Paul. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Have a safe and happy Christmas. Love to the family, and we'll see you in 2024.